Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Gemba 360 All Staff Training. My name is Nihal Samara. I'm the General Counsel and Legal Director here at the law firm Kaizen Synergy, and I'd like to welcome you all to today's session. Today's session focuses on incident reporting and how you can do that within your agency. Now, if we go into your incident, your Gemba 360 dashboard, what you will see is this screen here. Now, from here, let's say we have an incident that we are trying to lodge and inform our agency or line manager about. Now, that could be things like a trip or a fall. That could be somewhere where you've injured yourself at your workplace. Now, if I click on risk management, what will come up is this screen here, and it'll give me options of 3 forms. Now, from here, let's say I've had an injury and I need to notify my agency about this. So how I can do this is by simply clicking on the notification of incident form. Now, what comes up is this register screen here. I will come back to this, but I'm just going to show you right now how to register an incident that's occurred. So where we go to do that is simply clicking on add a new entry. And when that comes up, here it is here. Here's the form that we have. Now, I'm just currently logged into our demo site as Fred Flintstone, and so that's why my name appears here. Your name will equally appear at the top end of this form when you go to do it. Now, when completing this form, there is a couple of parts to this. If I scroll down, you can see there's a couple of parts here. Now, with it, there are some of the fields that required entry. So you can see here, here's a required field, and it's actually marked on this as well too. So this is a standard form that we have. So in this case, I'm going to say it involved a team member, and with it, the location of the incident. I'm actually going to say, look, was our address here in Eltham, but you can put in obviously your own address, what state it was based in. Again, this is a standard form that we use. The date that it actually occurred, it occurred today. The time that it occurred as well too, I'm actually going to say it occurred just at 1 p.m. Here we are here, and I'm going to save the time. And now it asks me for a series of other questions here, but importantly, a detailed description of the incident. Now, in this case, I'm simply going to say tripped on the carpet and ran in and fell into another staff member. Okay, something like that. Now, was there any equipment damage? No. And it'll ask some other details. So in this case, I'm going to say I actually fell into Barney Rubble. And was there any photos, date and time that the manager was first involved? Well, we've got that information here. Was there any supporting evidence? No. Okay. So I can then go down the incident type, and in this case, I'm just going to say that I actually was cut and stabbed by, it was a slip and trip and fall. So that's what happened here. Was there anybody else that was injured? In this case, I'm going to say that that's not applicable. Surname of the person injured was Barney Rubble. And I'm just going to put Barney's name in. So you can see it's actually quite straightforward, the questions that it's actually asking you. And in this case, we'll use my phone number that everyone has access to anyway. So here it is here. It'll then ask what type of injury it was. I'm going to say a slip, and I'm going to say, look, I injured my knee on it in a couple of places. Now, what happens here is when we come down to this risk matrix. Now, the risk matrix, you might have a slightly different risk matrix as well too. This is just the one standard one that we have in our Gemba dashboard. But as I said, you might have a slightly different risk matrix that appears on yours. Now, what happens here is that if it's marked as low, then essentially we've got 2 weeks. My line manager has 2 weeks to action this. If it is marked as medium, like a medium incident that's occurred, then we've got 8 to 14 days. If it's a serious incident, then we've got 1 to 7. And if it's a high risk, so let's say that we actually not only tripped and fall in this case, but accidentally fell on top of Barney, got electrocuted, and also accidentally broke his arm and the likes, then that might be a high or serious risk that you can see here. So usually high risks include where there was a client death and it's something that needs to be actioned literally within the day or by close of business, and that's why it will immediately go to the risk register team. The serious, medium, and lows will automatically just go to my line manager, and the risk register team will have access to it. So you can see here that it'll depend on whether the line manager simply gets notified. Now, what happens from here is when I save this form, you'll see that it will return me back to the incident register of what we have. So if I go back, and I'm just going to go back to my register as well. And here we are here. It returns me back to this form. Now, what it tells me is that I've got who lodged it. So in this case, I'm logged in as Fred. So it gives me my register of how many incidents I've registered. It gives me a description of summary of what happened. And it also tells me what the status is. And the status tells me whether my line manager or whether this form has been reviewed by the executive team. So with it, you can see here that this gives me an instant eyeline sight of exactly what's happened within my incident form that I've actually lodged. Now, if I have any other changes that I want to make, I can actually click on the edit button and actually go back in to the actual form. And this will actually give me the ability to update something. So if you've, let's say, wanted to add a bit more further information to it, then quite simply, you can actually click on edit and it will allow you to edit the form as well too. Keep in mind that any time that you actually edit the form, then if I make a change, so let's say, oh, I actually wasn't at this location here, it was actually at, let's say, and I'll just change this to 900 Main Street, Eltham. Okay, so let's say I change that and click on this. It'll update the form here, but keep in mind every time that I make the changes, if I go to, or anybody makes changes, it'll automatically give me the logs of what's actually going on, and here it is here. So I can actually see that this was changed by me on this date and at this time, and what's also been changed. So that's actually important for yourselves to know that any changes being made to the form or additions to it will automatically appear on the site. So once that's been done and the line manager or execs have gone through and actually marked whether debriefing has occurred, what's the planned action for reoccurrence, what was the completion date, they can actually mark it off then as completed as well. And I'll just mark that off completed here down the bottom and show you how that works because it's a demo site. So essentially from here, you can actually see what the status actually is. It allows you from an incident reporting function to actually be able to very simply and easily be able to report all your incidents directly from here as well too. Now, with that, I will add that under the risk management section, when you click on this, I can see a couple of questions have come up. We will be covering these off in the next few sessions, which was about hazard reporting and risk form reporting as well too. But I will just add that the difference between these two forms versus the notification of incident form is essentially this. The incident form relates to a form where there is an actual incident. So someone that's been injured, it might be a client, contractor, staff member, or colleague that's been injured. So this is where you use the incident form. The hazard form is slightly different, where you've identified a hazard, but nobody has actually been injured. And if we log in and actually jump into this one and have a look at this, I'll just do this briefly, then it will actually talk about where the hazard is. So that could include something, for example, like a slip in the carpet or the likes, and that's where you'll actually see that the 3 forms appear for that. Now, the last one is the risk form. And again, this is identifying a risk. So it might be that there's no hazard, but it's simply a risk that you've identified. It might be something to do with a compliance risk, a financial identification. So an example of that might be a possible breach of privacy or something, but there hasn't been, it's not a hazard and it's not an incident. So this is where you can actually use the 3 forms. We will be covering those forms off next week as we move through this open staff training. With that said, more than happy to stay online and answer any questions that you might have. We will open up the phone lines shortly, but if you do have any questions or you are watching this recording after today's live session and you do have some questions to ask, then by all means, please reach out to us on 1300 360 360, or you can email us at support@gemba360.com.